need it! I need it! Let's go! Gah!
Welcome to TYT. I'm your host, Anna Kasparian, and Donald Trump has declared himself and genocidal creep war heroes in the middle of attempting to get a Nobel Peace Prize. Can't wait to share that story with you, which we will in the first hour later on. We're also gonna talk a little bit about whether Israel should be considered America's greatest ally, or maybe it should be considered something entirely different. I'm gonna get into a deep dive on that topic right at the top of the show. Later, something I'm really looking forward to is a conversation with an American doctor who risked his life to travel to Gaza and provide aid to Palestinian civilians who are being bombed, maimed, slaughtered. You get the picture. He is the same doctor who was interviewed by Theo Von. He actually saw our coverage of that interview, reached out, and I'm just very pleased to know that he is willing to have a conversation with us here at TYT. So I'm looking forward to that. We'll be doing that in the first hour as well. Second hour, Cenk Uygur will be joining us. We're gonna talk about some of the hot goss coming out of that Smartmatic lawsuit that was filed against Fox News. Some of the redacted documents have been unredacted, meaning we get to see what was really going on behind the scenes over at Fox as all of these election lies were being spewed. Lots of fun to get to in the second hour, I promise you, even though the first hour is gonna be a little bit heavy. But as always, if you want to help and support what we do here at TYT, if you want to keep us independent from corporate influence, best way to do it is to become a member by going to tyt.com/join, or you can smash that join button if you're watching us on YouTube. You can also help support us for free by just liking and sharing the stream if you're watching us live. And engage, comment. I want to hear what you guys have to say about these stories, and we'll read some of your comments in our breaks when we do our social breaks. All right, why don't we get to our first topic?
This is like an existential situation here. Is it so bad to have this one country in the middle of the Middle East, which is a very rough neighborhood, Syria, Lebanon, that likes us, that will help us, that would, if we ever had a conflict there, help with our military staging, that has amazing intelligence, that it shares with us, that has amazing abilities to effect, terrorist takedown plans, which is also helpful. So like these strategic reasons make sense to me too, for our understanding we don't have endless funds to spend some there.
Megyn Kelly sat down with Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene for a discussion about Israel, the Israel lobby, and the ongoing genocide in Gaza, which Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene rightfully labels as a genocide, to her credit. Now, a declarative statement that you just heard Megyn Kelly make is something that we as Americans have heard over and over again. It's this claim that Israel is America's greatest and most important ally. I think that is the greatest lie told in America, to be quite honest, and I want to explain why, point by point. Now, Megyn Kelly brings up the sad reality that Middle Eastern countries express some hostility toward the United States. And that hostility, in my opinion, has a lot to do with our unwavering support for Israel, which essentially saddles us with a ton of toxic baggage. The United States has done much to destabilize the Middle East on behalf of Israel. Here's legendary political scientist and co-author of the Israel Lobby, John Mearsheimer, to explain in greater detail.
Israel is a strategic albatross around our neck. The policies that Israel pursues in the Middle East are not in our interest.
The Zionists from the beginning have wanted a greater Israel. And David Ben-Gurion wrote a piece in 1918, and David Ben-Gurion, of course, is the founding father of Israel.
Yes.
Wrote a piece in 1918. I don't think it's ever been published in English. It's just in Yiddish, where he describes what his goals are for a greater Israel. right? And it obviously includes Green Line, Israel, Gaza, the West Bank. It includes parts of the East Bank. It includes parts of southern Syria. It includes parts of southern Lebanon, and it includes the Sinai Peninsula. Just think about that. That was Ben Gurion's vision. And this was a vision that was shared by almost all the early Zionist leaders. And there are still many people in Israel who are in favor of a greater Israel. They don't want a tiny Israel.
And that includes the current Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, who told the Israeli publication I-24 News that he is in fact a believer of the Greater Israel Project. That was an announcement he made. So let's not hide the ball here. Let's pretend like we don't know what the real objectives are as it pertains to Israel's foreign policy. So just think about that for a second. What's in it for the United States and Americans as we aid and abet Israel's conquest, which requires ethnic cleansing, genocide, and regime change wars in sovereign countries? How exactly does that benefit us? In my opinion, it doesn't. Instead, it leads to hostility toward the United States. For instance, here's Benjamin Netanyahu all the way back in 2002 advising Congress on what our foreign policy should be in regard to Iraq.
You can beam Melrose Place, but it may take a long time. On the other hand, if you take out Saddam's regime, I guarantee you that it will have enormous positive reverberations on the region. And I think that people sitting right next door in Iran, young people, and many others will say, the time of such regimes, of such despots, is gone.
Of course, the United States conducted a preemptive war and invaded Iraq in March of 2003 on the false claims that Saddam Hussein was harboring weapons of mass destruction. He was a real threat to the United States. Now, of course, there were no WMDs, nor were there IDF soldiers on the ground assisting American soldiers in combat, but hundreds of thousands of innocent people died. That stupid regime change war ruined the lives of so many people and destroyed that country. And honestly, I can't blame the people of Iraq for feeling a little bit of anger toward the United States over what we did. The real question is why we don't feel more rage here in the United States. After all, we lost 4,492 American soldiers. Another 32,292 American soldiers were wounded. In addition to that, America's debt began to skyrocket with our meddling in the Middle East on behalf of Israel. Between fiscal years 2001 through 2021, we've wasted away a minimum, this is a low estimate, of $1.6 trillion on wars in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria. Israel was seeking the fall of Bashar al-Assad in Syria, of course, and we helped them fund the rebels during the civil war. And what was our reward? Having Ahmed al-Sharaa, a former Al-Qaeda terrorist, become the new leader of Syria. I was under the impression that Al-Qaeda was America's foe, with that whole 9/11 terror attack and everything. But Israel won big because Syria's new leader is very deferential to Tel Aviv. In addition to that, Israel was able to take advantage of the situation and invade the buffer zone in southwestern Syria and has essentially continued to occupy it. Then on October 25th of this year, Israel went even further in its invasion of southern Syria while conducting airstrikes on Damascus. They actually did so the day after the Israelis called for the demilitarization of South Syria so they can just swoop in and take the land. So why are we helping Israel build an empire on our dime and with the use of our soldiers? And as the Arab and Muslim world suffers from the consequences of this destabilization, are we really going to pretend like we don't understand why the civilians are upset with the United States? But the US has to be getting some benefit from its relationship from Israel, right? Like there has to be something. And luckily, hey, look, we've got ex-CIA agent Andrew Bustamante, who certainly thinks so. So let's hear what he has to say.
I am a staunch supporter of Israel's importance to the United States. They are the first wall of defense for us. There's a reason that everybody's up so much at the end of World War II, because we had to build walls around the American boundary. We needed to manipulate Europe. NATO is there to protect us. We're not there to help Europe. NATO's there to protect us. Israel's there to protect us. We continue to, our presidents like Biden, call the Saudi Arabian prince all sorts of horrible names and promise justice, but it never happens because Saudi Arabia protects us. Americans for sure don't want our enemies at the gate. So we let our enemies go to other gates. And then in diplomatic channels, military channels, and intelligence channels, we give them the tools to fight the fight. Israel doesn't trust us. They know we have set them up to take bullets instead of our people. They know that we put them into a country that's surrounded by their enemies. They understand that every proposition and accord that we try to force them into benefits us more than it benefits them.
The Saudis were involved in 9/11. Did we forget that? The Saudis are what? What was that? Israel protects us? Which country decided to use its military might, its soldiers, and its bombs to strike Iran's nuclear sites? Was it IDF soldiers? No, it wasn't. It was American soldiers that did that. What is this guy even talking about? Okay, so we, the Americans, decided Israel would be established in the Middle East where they'd be surrounded by their enemies. We decided that? It wasn't, due to the fact that the Israelis consider that area the Holy Land. It wasn't the result of the British Foreign Ministry, which through the Balfour Declaration of 1917 promised that a Jewish state would be established in a plot of land inhabited by the Palestinians. How the hell was that guy in the CIA? That is some of the most depressing news I've heard in a long time. And honestly, like the delusions don't end there. Here's more.
That's you very open about the fact that the Mossad is extremely reckless. Very open about the fact that we don't have to solve Iran's problem because that's Israel's problem. We just give them the money and you go do it, right? What do you need? Here, go do it. It's on you, and you guys pretty much can self-sustain yourself.
Even better, we don't give you the money. We sell you the weapons, so we make the profit, but you're still giving us. You're still buying in American dollars.
American taxpayers are forced to provide Israel with $4.8 billion in military aid each year as part of a 10-year agreement called the Memorandum of Understanding. On top of that, we've been funneling tens of billions of dollars of additional money to Israel since October 7th, 2023. In fact, why don't we take a look at this handy dandy chart, which shows you the top countries we provide both economic and military aid to. Israel, of course, beats every single country, with American taxpayers shelling out more than $310 billion that we've given to Israel, up until 2024. Egypt, who we essentially bribed to play nice with Israel, is a distant second with around half as much foreign aid from Americans. He literally just said that Israel buys weapons from us with their own money. Israel had an economic surplus in 2021 in the middle of a pandemic. The United States is $37 trillion in debt. They have universal health care, paid family leave, all sorts of perks and benefits that their pay pigs here in America don't ever get to take advantage of. We're like drowning in debt while their economy remains strong. And this guy was in the CIA. He has the audacity to tell people that they're helping us economically by buying our weapons. Now look, one could argue that the military aid that gets funneled to Israel does benefit some Americans, namely, that teeny tiny group of defense contractors that stands to profit. But actually, even in that case, there's a bit of a loophole that Israel gets to benefit from. Let's take a look.
This is really interesting. We give a ton of money to all these foreign countries, and if it's military aid, they're required to purchase weapons from our defense contractors. Except Israel is the only one with an exception. They don't have to buy from our American defense contractors. They can use that money to buy from Israeli defense contractors.
Oh, wow.
So there's a funny little exception.
So we are paying the costs in both blood and treasure to help our special ally build their military and their empire. Got it. But hey, at least we have a country that's friendly and nice to us in the Middle East, right? Let's ask another former CIA agent, John Kiriakou.
Who did you not at all trust, even though you had to work with them?
The Israelis.
You didn't trust them?
Not as far as I could throw them.
You, or was that a cultural thing?
It was cultural. But my very first encounter with the Israeli intelligence service, the Mossad, I was a brand new analyst. This is like March of 1990. And I was instructed to participate in a large scale briefing of the Israeli Mossad and Shin Bet representatives in Washington. And we don't allow the Israelis into CIA headquarters because they would always come with gifts, and the gifts had always listening devices packed inside them. And somebody brings you a gift, you x-ray it. It's the normal process. And we're like, you guys can't keep coming back here every single time trying to bug our conference rooms. So no more. So,
and was it easy to x-ray and see that they had bugs in them?
Yeah.
What percentage of the time did gifts have bugs in them?
100%.
They're so nice to us. And look, honestly, I can't be upset with Americans who drank the pro-Israel Kool-Aid because the propaganda has been ingrained in every single facet of American life. Just as one example, guess who published the textbooks America's children were made to read in our public schools? Just a guy by the name of Robert Maxwell, who was not only the father to child groomer and child predator Ghislaine Maxwell, but he was also an Israeli spy. If you don't believe me, take a look at this.
The same year Maxwell acquired the Mirror, he accompanied fellow British business tycoon Gerald Ronson to a meeting with the Israeli Prime Minister. For decades, Maxwell had kept his Jewish roots private, but Ronson convinced him to admit his ancestry. Midway through their meeting, Maxwell announced he wanted to invest $250 million in Israel and agreed to share security intel with the Mossad. Maxwell kept his word. 2 years later, an Israeli nuclear technician named Mordecai Vanunu went to London hoping to blow the whistle on a dangerous nuclear arms program. He was prepared to sell the evidence to the Sunday Times, but Maxwell persuaded him to sell the story to the Mirror instead. Maxwell sent the pictures to the Israeli embassy in London, supposedly to confirm the truth of the story. But Maxwell never paid Vanunu and never ran the story either. Later, Vanunu was drugged and kidnapped back to Israel, where he was imprisoned on crimes against the state. Some years later, at Maxwell's funeral, Israeli President Shimon Peres personally praised Maxwell's services to Israel.
It wasn't clarified in the script for that video, so let me just make sure we're all on the same page and we know what we're talking about here. That dangerous nuclear arms program that Robert Maxwell wanted to avoid any news being published about belonged to Israel. Israel was conducting that dangerous nuclear arms program. They were stealing nuclear secrets from the United States. They're a special friend, they're so nice to us. And developing nuclear weapons that till this day they refuse to acknowledge. Till this day they refuse to engage or be part of the Non-Proliferation Treaty. Till this day, they are engaged in that kind of nefarious activity, whereas Iran was part of the Non-Proliferation Treaty, had inspectors in their own country, and there was confirmation that they were not building nuclear weapons. But Israel got its dog, the United States, to carry out strikes against their nuclear sites anyway. Anyway, back to Maxwell. Maxwell acquired the Science Research Association in 1988 and positioned it as the centerpiece of his educational publishing business in the US and Canada, by the way. Sorry, Canadians. Later, SRA would merge with McGraw-Hill's educational publishing division to form a joint venture which became a major force in the US textbook market. Maxwell also acquired other educational publishers like London House and Macmillan, which only helped him further expand his reach into the educational market. We've been part of a long-term propaganda campaign that seeks to brainwash us into selling out our own country, really, to help Israel build its own. And now we're all complicit in a horrific genocide. So excuse me if I refuse to buy the lie, and it is a lie, that Israel is an ally to the United States. And it appears our government and portions of our media aren't really allies to the American people either. We gotta take a break, we'll be right back.
What contributions to the progressive cause are you most proud of? I mean, I don't have super high aspirations for a singular role that I can play in the movement or anything. I try to present myself as what I think that I am, which is a progressive man who is driven by I think, well-interrogated and well-organized system of values that I try to stay consistent on, and I demonstrate that that's the sort of life that a person can lead and be successful and be happy and all of that. And that should not need to be done, but there are so many people on the right that are trying to push men in the opposite direction that I want to be able to do that. Along the way, if I can get people to care about some topics that they wouldn't necessarily care about, or that for some men they might think that's not a topic that they should be focused on, that's definitely something that I relish doing. And along the way, I mean, we've been able to introduce people to a lot of candidates. That's been a big part of what we've done. You know, not all of them necessarily got in office. Probably most of them did not. And a lot of them you might not even remember their names. But it was great to be able to provide people the platform where they had the chance of, you know, making a difference. Obviously AOC and all that, but there's been a lot of great people along the way.
In the bonus episode for the members, we do some inside baseball. We're gonna look at John's desk. Nice little spaceship here. Nerd. But it is kind of look cool. Who has Legos? Oh no. He's taken apart a keyboard. Who has a mouse pad that's this big? He's got a dog with a nose that you could hang something on. You know what this desk screams to me? Nerd. And that's how we like him. We love Johnny Pie. He's got his own personality like everybody does at TYT. Come meet us all in the bonus episodes. TYT.com/team.
David Sorrell, Anita Turner. Adam Green drop by.
Charlemagne.
Congressman, great to have you. It's great to be with you, Chang.
Your show is a great thing. You're informing people. A lot of the shows that I live on, you know, my CNN, my MSNBC, and even Fox, and any of the other shows, NPR, they are so quick to decide that they know what this building means today.
The one thing that I hate that politicians do, you know, they talk about the people they should be talking to.
Do they have any idea that they're the establishment and that they're hated, or do they not realize that at all?
People are so deeply in their little universe. I think it's very easy to not really question what you're doing.
Voters have a right to ask questions of any nominee, whether they're independent, Republican, or Democrat.
The system is duopoly that suppresses competition.
How is it the year 2024 and we're still like, maybe they'll talk about paid medical? Like how is that like at one level it's like, good, what we're talking about it now. You're like, it's 2024.
And that's always been the critique, that your critique of us is, well, you guys give good speeches, you put out good tweets, but you're not wielding actual power. Now we're starting to.
My favorite news platform by far. It's not even close.
It's about a country and a principle, and that's what you and I both work to achieve, and I'm so glad that at least half the battle has now been won.
If you want to go really hear what's going on, honestly, you should tune into the Young Turks.
Thanks for doing such a great job. Please keep it up. Hang tough.
Yeah.
That makes me so happy.
Oh, I like making you happy.
I didn't know about that.
This is a happy Anna Kasparian.
What's up?
You're welcome, YouTube.
Join the Dragon Squad by becoming a YouTube channel member. Click the join button below or sign up on tyt.com/join to get access to fun emojis, a member-only chat, exclusive shop TYT designs, ad-free watching, and so many other amazing perks. Plus, you get bragging rights for being part of the coolest community on the internet and help us drive real, positive change in the world. The Dragon Squad awaits, so join today.
back to TYT. I'm your host, Anna Kasparian. In a little bit, after we have an interview, I will read some of the comments coming in from our members. But I want to, maximize the time that we have for this segment for the interview. So without further ado, let's get into it.
The few American doctors here are doing what they can to help Palestinian medical staff. A photo above Zainab's cot reads, Zainab the Queen. She suffers from a condition that means she needs special baby formula. Foreign doctors saying any formula they bring with them is confiscated by Israeli authorities, part of a wider 5-month blockade of the Strip. Images of skeletal Palestinian children like Zainab sparking outrage around the world, but Israel is casting doubt on claims of famine.
One thing that has given me a little bit of hope in this entire nightmare that's currently transpiring in Gaza, which of course is aided and abetted by the United States, by our government, by our tax dollars, is the fact that we have brave and courageous American doctors who will literally leave their families, risk their lives to provide medical aid to Palestinians who are suffering from the brunt of this ongoing genocide. One of those doctors is actually an individual I spoke about last week. His name is Dr. Syed Rahman, and he was recently interviewed by Theo Von. I encouraged everyone to check out the full interview, and if you haven't already, please do so. But luckily today, Dr. Rahman is here to speak with us, and I'm so grateful to have you, Doctor. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Anna. I'm really excited.
I'm really excited to speak with you. You had a lengthy interview with Theo Von, and I don't want to ask you the exact same question. So I'm gonna make a point to kind of have you elaborate on some of the things that you did say during the interview. But before we get to all of that, I just want to remind the audience that the doctor actually worked at Nasser Hospital. And if you remember any of our coverage of some of the things that happened to Nasser Hospital throughout the last 2 years, you'll remember the rage, you'll remember, Israeli bombardment. You might actually remember this.
In Gaza, medics and civil defense workers are still recovering bodies from mass graves found at the Nasser Medical Complex for the 6th day in a row following Israel's siege on the hospital. Over 320 bodies have so far been discovered, including women, children, patients, and medical staff.
We don't have medication to complete their treatment. The simplest thing like painkiller and anesthesia we don't have. We don't have gauze, we don't have gloves, we don't have anything.
So doctor, now that you've experienced what Nasser Hospital was like, tell me what it was like, serving patients there under conditions like that.
Yeah, so there's a story of serving the patients, and then there's a story of the healthcare workers themselves, especially in the setting what you just described of the mass graves being discovered in the grounds of Nasser Hospital. We were actually on the 4th floor balcony. We were looking over what was now a parking lot, but that was what was in 2024 the mass grave. It was just really odd to see buses of all the employees coming down and just driving over that area because there's no space anywhere else. But as for the patients themselves, it was just a constant influx of women, children, men, boys, girls, and elderly, handicapped, and it just no one way to describe just the chaos that ensued with all the family members coming in, going up and down the stairs took way longer than it needed to because they're just packed with people trying to sit on a stair because they feel safer in the hospital than outside of the hospital, even in the Mawasi refugee camps where it's supposed to be a safe green zone. So it was just absolute hecticness all the time throughout the hospital in Nasser Hospital.
There have been videos showing IDF soldiers inside hospitals intentionally destroying some of the equipment, making it even more difficult to provide care for those who have been wounded. Did you see any of that or experience any of that during your time at Nasser Hospital?
When we first got there, they had put a red zone right outside the hospital when we were really afraid that they would invade Nasser Hospital. And they've done it before, so we were taking it very seriously. The organization I went through, which was Rahma Worldwide, advised us, if they come in, just follow their instructions, do whatever they say. But luckily, that didn't happen. That said, I talked to many of the healthcare workers there. And the last time in 2024, they shot into the hospital, and then the hospital director called the Israeli army, said, "Why'd you do this? Like, what's going on?" And they said, "Oh, you did that. You guys exploded an oxygen tank," which is complete, chaos because then they invaded afterwards. But just walking throughout the hospital, you see the destruction in the burn unit. You see where the drone struck the journalist, and there's 5-bed burn unit that's completely destroyed. You even go to the radiology area, and there's like cinder blocks blocking up a door that was exploded by a tank shell. So everywhere you walk through Nasser Hospital, you see signs of the destruction, and you see names of the IDF soldiers on the walls. And I was told they took selfies in that area, kind of to show off on their social media that, hey, I was here, which is absolutely insane. But no, we actually didn't see any Israeli soldiers while in the Nasser Hospital, Khan Yunis area. In the distance, we could see the tanks, the drones, the jets, the Apaches. And then upon entry and exiting, we could see the soldiers and their kind of battalions.
One of the claims that Israel makes in regard to why these hospital attacks happen is that they're allegedly being used as Hamas command centers, essentially headquarters for their military operations, even though Hamas obviously doesn't have a military. So, I know you told Theo Von that you didn't see any Hamas militants, but was there any conversation about Hamas using hospitals as command centers? Was there any, gossip about that? Any rumors about that?
I think what I was trying to convey is no one really has time to talk about Hamas, and they're just trying to survive. They're trying to go to GHF sites, get food. If they can afford it, they'll go to the markets. That said, as I mentioned on the show, I was curious, so I asked the questions that nobody else was talking about, which is like, hey, tell me more, like what's going on out there, and are they actually here in the hospital? Like what's going on with Shifa Hospital? They said there was a huge tunnel system underneath with European General Hospital, which was I was supposed to go, but they blew it up. I was really excited to go there because they had an angio suite to do interventional radiology procedures. But, I asked like, what, was there actually a tunnel underneath the hospital? And everyone's, blatantly denies it. In fact, I'm waiting for some actual evidence besides, some gossip here and there that there was a tunnel. So, in short, we did not see any combatants in the hospital. Mm-hmm. We did not treat any obvious combatants. Like I mentioned, it's not like they're wearing a vest that says, Hamas. And then to assume there's a tunnel system underneath the hospital, I mean, that's the responsibility of a special forces to figure that out. You can't just bomb the hospital and assume something's underground. You know what I'm saying?
Dr. Rahman, you shared the story of the conversation you had with your wife prior to leaving for Nasser Hospital. And I'd like to believe that if I were in your wife's position, I would be as brave as she was, that I would be willing to make the kind of sacrifice that she did. Especially given the fact that, the IDF is not going to be able to distinguish whether you're a Palestinian. I mean, you honestly don't look like a white American, right? So was there ever a moment where you feared for your own life? Because the IDF has been able to just slaughter people with impunity. I mean, American citizens in the West Bank, which of course Hamas doesn't govern, have been killed by Israeli settlers with impunity. So was there ever a thought in your mind that this might be it for me?
Yeah, I mean, before I even went there, I kind of went back and forth many times to actually decide whether I want to go through with this mission. In the end, it was a resounding yes. And I'm glad I went because the stories I came back with just absolutely life-changing. But that said, even when we were there, just seeing the destruction around you and seeing how there's a bomb about every 30 minutes, up to 200 meters away, and you can constantly hear the military activity to the point that they almost, our organization was telling us they might actually invade Nasser Hospital. I mean, there was 4 American doctors in this group of 6 doctors, and we were constantly just keeping our families up to date. We're just making sure we told them we love them at the end of the day. Because even at night, like you just wake up in the middle of the night with this ginormous bomb and it just rumbles your eardrums, the doors, the windows. So yeah, I mean, I never felt imminently at death, a threat to die because I'm not Palestinian or local. But you are right. Could they have mistaken me? Absolutely. And that's why we were told to always wear our, vests that have the logos of the organization we're with. And if we can, carry our phones because they say that the drones can actually track who is where, and we're all connected to the Israeli towers anyways. So I kind of believe that.
So let's talk a little bit about the patients. Describe to me what you experienced. What were the more memorable patients that you treated while you were in Nasser?
Yeah, so if you watch the interview, I talked about the 30-year-old woman with the extracted fetus, and I talked about the 15-year-old Amir, and those are some of my most intense memories. But there are many, like there's just so many different stories. So for example, I remember getting there was a 7-year-old child who had a shrapnel injury to his abdomen, had 2 surgeries already into his abdomen in a matter of a week. And when I got there, he was yellow as a crayon, and his bilirubin was like 40, which is almost, incompatible with life. And so they were waiting for someone to do something. And it just so happened that my specialty was there to be able to treat him. So when the doctor advised the parents that, this American doctor is going to take care of you, they were just begging me to do it like immediately. And once we were able to do that, we put the drain into his liver to relieve that obstruction, the blockage, and he got better. But my point is, like, if we weren't there wouldn't be enough doctors to do these procedures on these patients. And unfortunately, what's happening now is Israel is blocking even NGOs and medical groups such as Rahma. They just got blocked from going their next 2 missions indefinitely. I'm not sure. I think Catholic Relief Services got banned. So, what's happening right now is physicians are being blocked from going to Gaza, and we're like really that last hope.
I hadn't gotten that update. I can't imagine what kinds of excuses are being used to block medical professionals into entering the Gaza Strip. But I actually think it's important for you to, if you are willing to do so, of course, because it is a horrific incident and case. If you're willing to talk a little bit about the 30-year-old woman, because I think her story is an important one to share. So for those of you who heard him talk about it on Theo Vaughn's podcast, apologies, you're gonna hear it again. But I think it's important for those who haven't heard it to really understand the reality on the ground in Gaza.
And this is a story I saw, right? I firsthand visualized this, but this happens so frequently, and I will reiterate it because it is so powerful and disgusting and wrong and unnatural. But essentially, a 30-year-old, we see her in the trauma bay. Her blood pressure is dropping. We do an ultrasound of her uterus. She's about 14, 15 weeks pregnant, making sure the baby has a heart rate. But unfortunately, we don't find any fetal heart tones, so no baby heartbeat. So her blood pressure is dropping. We take her emergently to the operating room, and they do a fetal extraction, and they have to remove the uterus. When we looked at the fetus, it's just so wrong. It's, we have fetal demise for so many medical reasons, and it's natural, right? But to see an exploded fetus with blood coming out of the neck of the fetus, which is, so tiny, it's despicable. And on top of that, even though the woman survived, she's never gonna have a baby again. So she went from almost having a baby in a few months to never having a baby again, to having, the memory of an exploded fetus by, the occupation. It's just, it's something that I lost sleep over when I was there, and I continue to think about because, as sometimes when I'm scrolling through my pictures, preparing for these interviews, I come across that fetus again, and it's just so devastating. And I actually did a grand rounds at one of my hospitals here, and I shared that picture, so it is available to see. I wouldn't advise anyone to just see it for the sake of seeing it, but it really just goes to show you the brutality that's going on there.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely would not be able to handle seeing it. Just hearing you talk about it makes me, I have a difficult time with it. But I think it's so important for, these atrocities to be documented, and for the evidence of what's actually happening on the ground to be available so people know what the truth is. And when you hear about these stories of how people have been maimed, it makes me wonder how the Palestinian people feel about Americans. I'm not talking about the American government, but about the American people. Because as I'm sure you know, it's not like we really have much of a choice in whether or not, tens of billions of our dollars get funneled to Israel to carry out these atrocities. Both political parties support it. Both political parties do as they're told by the Israeli government. And I really, it breaks my heart. I feel a tremendous amount of shame, and I feel our only saving grace happens to be people like you who are there providing aid and really risking your life to do it. But what sense do you get from the Palestinian people in regard to Americans?
Well, as you know, they have no hope in the politicians. But for the people, it's mixed feelings, So one of the first questions I got asked when I was there is, were you part of the encampments? Were you part of the protests? Because they kind of use that as a baseline. Like, are you actually speaking up on behalf of us? Are you using your free voice that you have in America that we don't have and actually speaking for the oppressed, And by the way, they're very selfless people. They want you to speak up for the oppressed everywhere. Yes, they want you to speak about Gaza, but they want you to speak up on Sudan and all the other places that unfortunately oppression is really rampant. But I will say majority of people know that the citizens of America have nothing to do with this. They know that most Americans are just busy trying to pay their taxes, pay their mortgage, take their kids home from school. They're humans too. They go through the same, kind of life that we do, aside from the fact that they have to go through 9 wars in 10 years or something like that. So no, I don't think that they have anything against American citizens. To the point, I even will go as far as to say, like, if they can just have peace, they would somehow figure out a way to coexist with Israel, because they just don't want killing anymore. They just want to live as human beings. But the problem is, are we really going to get to a state where everyone has equal rights and it's a complete equal democracy like we're supposed to have in America? Are we actually going to get to that point there? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, look, I love all the wonderful people out there who truly have the optimism necessary to believe in a one-state solution. I am not one of those optimistic people. I think 2 states makes a lot more sense, because I think the Palestinian people deserve their own state, self-determination without the meddling and the scheming that we've seen by the Israeli government to prevent them from being able to live lives of dignity, And so I'm kind of terrified to know the answer to this, because I know that it is an issue. Recently there was a graduation in Gaza featuring 1,000 children who have been orphaned. That video is really difficult to watch, but I'm curious, when it comes to children who don't make it, they get whatever medical aid they can, but they don't make it. Have you experienced patients, children who have passed, but no one claims their bodies because their adult family members have also been killed?
Of course. I actually went to the morgue when I was there at one of these GHF massacres. Yeah, after one of the GHF massacres, and there's this gazebo, and there's just 10, 15 bodies there waiting to be claimed. And some of them are kids, some of them are adults, some of them are elderly. And sometimes a family comes by and identifies one of them, and you just hear this really loud shriek, and it's devastating. It just penetrates your heart. But yes, absolutely, there are 15-year-olds, 12-year-olds, 10-year-olds just waiting to be identified in the white plastic wrap that their body's in with the zipper tied up. And no one claims them. And eventually the Ministry of Health has to just document it and bury them. So yeah, that happened. I mean, even today, one of my colleagues I keep up with there's maybe a 10-year-old boy, father, mother, sister, brother got a bomb. They all died. This kid had 50% burns, and they tried to keep him alive, but he died too. So he's the last part of that family, and he's going to have to be buried by himself. So this unfortunately is so common. There's hundreds of us physicians who have been there. I appreciate your kind words, but this is truly part of our Hippocratic oath to humanity. It's not just to Americans, it's to humanity. No matter what color you are, no matter what language you speak, I don't think I deserve the praise. I think this is an obligation to us as physicians and nurses, healthcare workers. I would love to treat an American patient equally to a Gazan patient. At the end of the day, the human body is a human body. When you do a CAT scan, guess what? We all have the same organs. We all look the same on the inside, believe it or not. So that's how I feel.
Well, I know you don't want the praise, but too bad. Dr. Rahman, you make me proud to be American. I think that you are an example of American greatness. And I just thank you so much for everything that you're doing. Not only for what you did in Gaza, but the willingness to speak about what you experienced and what you saw with your own two eyes, especially in a context where so many journalists in Gaza have been killed, hundreds of them. And so getting the truth out, talking about what's actually happening, especially as someone who is, you've bared witness to it is so important. So Dr. Aziz Rahman, thank you again. Thank you for being generous with your time. Any final thoughts before we go?
Yeah, just like you mentioned, the fact that journalists aren't allowed there, yeah, sure, it's healthcare workers that have to be the journalists, but it's you guys, you, Anna, and all the other media that's really doing their part to disseminate this knowledge amongst the people in America. And I think it's so necessary for us to team up with you guys and really share what's going on. And just keep it up. I know you're getting a lot of hate, especially I saw your Canary Mission thing yesterday. Don't let that stop you. You're so brave. Don't let these people stop you. You're speaking the truth, and when you get closer to the truth, unfortunately, people get very upset. And I really respect you for that.
Thank you. Ain't nobody gonna stop me, let me just tell you that. So thank you again, and please keep in touch. If there's anything else that you wanna update our audience with, you always have a place here. Thank you again, and have a great night.
I appreciate it, thank you.
All right, everyone, we're gonna take a brief break, and when we come back, we'll talk a little bit about how Donald Trump has declared himself and Netanyahu a war hero, even as he's attempting to get nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize. Props to me for not tearing up. It was about to happen during that interview, and I'm glad I was able to keep it under control. Anyway, I just want to read some comments, starting with Yaz in our member section, who says, "Crazy how my whole life I was blinded to the propaganda." I think a lot of people were. I mean, think about it. When you're in your middle school social studies class, are you supposed to know that a Mossad agent is the publisher of that book? I didn't know until like a few weeks ago. But anyway, don't be too hard on yourself, Iyaz. Never thought TYT would change my opinion on anything, but they were the ones who opened my eyes. Keep up the good fight. Iyaz, thank you for believing in us, or at least giving us a shot, even though you didn't think we'd ever change your mind on anything. Gelindo says, our debt really doesn't mean anything. It's only used to take benefits that we pay for away from us. Well, I do know that our government loves to print money in order to pay for a lot of this nonsense that we engage in. So if that's the case, if they're just gonna print money, how about they stop collecting taxes from us altogether? Seriously, if they're gonna make a mockery out of our economic system, But I hear what you're saying. Geeky Gage says, I can't afford a doctor, but thank God our special ally is doing well. Box writes in and says, we are bad at overthrowing government. So America is one big company store. We pay them and they visit our shops and give the money back. Pretty much, yes. By the way, that's not even mandated. If they want, they can take the money we give them to strengthen their own military assets, right? Their own military contractors. Brian Schwartz says the scuttlebutt about why the US is beholden to Israel is that Mossad can blackmail the US, like as in Epstein, take it or leave it. I mean, yeah, I think that there is some circumstantial evidence that points in that direction. Stinky Stocking Full of Lies says the Israel stuff reminds me of the North Korea propaganda against the USA that kids are fed since birth. Yeah, propaganda, by the way, can either be very nefarious, as is what you're talking about here. Propaganda can also be a little more subtle and less nefarious. But yeah, I mean, you're right in making this comparison. All right, let's get back to the show. Back to TYT, I'm your host, Anna Kasparian. Michael Cotavelli in our Super Chats has a fantastic suggestion. I would actually really love to do this interview. Can you invite and interview the Jewish-Palestinian grassroots organization Standing Together from Israel? They are behind many protests against Netanyahu to end the occupation and the genocide. I would actually really love to speak to someone from that organization. I have a lot of questions, especially about those who have taken to the streets. You know, hundreds of thousands of people took to the streets in Israel over the weekend to demand an end to the war. And I want to know what their motivations are, right? Like, are they worried about what's happening to civilians? Are they worried about civilians and the hostages, or only the hostages? I just kind of want to get the temperature in Israel, because you see these mass protests, which gives me hope. There's no question about that. And then you look at the polling that shows upward of like 82% of Israelis love the slaughter campaign that's going on in the Gaza Strip. So I just would love to have a little bit of clarity. And look, in Liberty and Guns We Trust, I try my best to stay away from language like this because I think it's a little too inflammatory. But I'm gonna read your comment, I'm not gonna censor it. It's not reals, meaning Israel's, like a cancerous tumor. When you talk about it, it screams and causes us to bleed. It's a literal blood leaching invasive species. See, this kind of language, like we have to be careful with and we need to stay away from. Because you also have to consider the fact that there are people out there who are not well, and if they hear inflammatory language like that, they might take it, they might engage in violent acts against our Jewish brothers and sisters in this country, and I don't want that to happen, okay? So let's just be careful. You know that I condemn Israel in the strongest possible terms, and that has led to me being a target, which I don't care, I'm gonna keep speaking the truth. But we also have to be as careful and responsible with our language as we can be. I'm not trying to lecture you, I totally know where you're coming from, but anyway. All right, now that that's out of the way, let's get to our next story.
Worked with your friend Bibi. He's a good man. He's in there fighting. He's fighting. You know, they're trying to put him in jail on top of everything else. How about that? He's nuts. He's a war hero because we work together. He's a war hero. I guess I am too. Yep. Nobody cares, but I am too. I mean, I sent those planes.
The man you just heard from is desperately seeking a Nobel Peace Prize. Yes, President Donald Trump declared that despite the ongoing genocidal campaign in Gaza, he and Netanyahu are war heroes. War heroes. There's currently a warrant by the International Criminal Court for Netanyahu because of the war crimes he's committing, but he's a war hero, okay. Now, he made these remarks during a call-in Hasbara sesh with neocon Mark Levin. And so Netanyahu did seize on that clip. He uploaded it to his X page, and here's what that looks like.
Worked with your friend Bibi. He's a good man. He's in there fighting. He's fighting, they're trying to put him in jail on top of everything else. How about that? He's nuts. He's a war hero. Because we work together. He's a war hero. I guess I am too. Yep. Nobody cares, but I am too. I mean, I sent those planes.
Wow, great. It's great when the United States president steals American money and funnels it over to a foreign government that's committing atrocities and a genocide in the Gaza Strip. It's great when the statements of the American president can be used for propagandistic purposes by the individual who is wanted by the International Criminal Court for the war crimes he's committing. It's just all wonderful. It's all fine and dandy. Wow. This isn't a stain on America's reputation at all. Now, on the heels of what can only be described as the sloppiest cover-up of the Epstein files imaginable, Trump has suddenly become comically subservient to Netanyahu and the foreign country of Israel. And that includes tripling down his support for anything this precious war criminal Netanyahu wants to do, especially in recent weeks. So what about the American people? Let's actually take a step back, because Trump is not a representative of the sentiments that American people are currently feeling toward the country of Israel, the government of Israel. And it turns out that the American people are actually moving farther and farther away from supporting Netanyahu. So in July, Gallup revealed the following: Netanyahu rated unfavorably by majority of Americans for the first time, okay? And it might have something to do with, this.
The few American doctors here are doing what they can to help Palestinian medical staff. A photo above Zainab's cot reads Zainab the Queen. She suffers from a condition that means she needs special baby formula. Foreign doctors saying any formula they bring with them is confiscated by Israeli authorities, part of a wider 5-month blockade of the Strip. Images of skeletal Palestinian children like Zainab sparking outrage around the world, but Israel is casting doubt on claims of famine.
Yeah, it turns out starving people to death, especially children, not a good look on the international stage. People are gonna kind of turn on you, and that's what's been happening in the United States as it pertains to American perception toward Netanyahu. And why don't we take a look at the results of that polling that I had just referenced? Because this chart will show you that, favorability for Netanyahu has been dropping considerably. So Gallup has been asking Americans how they feel about Netanyahu dating back to 1997. The green line represents Americans with a favorable opinion of Netanyahu. The orange line represents unfavorable, and the gray dotted line represents no opinion at all. Okay, so if you look at this chart, you'll see that historically more Americans have viewed Netanyahu favorably than unfavorably. But that changed, and it changed around 2021. So the amazing thing is that Donald Trump very clearly knows how a massive portion of his own base feels about Netanyahu, the Israeli government, and what's currently transpiring in the Gaza Strip. And they don't like it. To their credit, they don't like it, and they are vocal about it. In fact, Trump even acknowledged this during his Hasbara session with Levin. So let's hear that portion.
Thank you for what you're doing, really for Israel, quite frankly, and your support of the state of Israel. There's a lot of Israel hatred and anti-Semitism and all the rest of this stuff swirling around, and you stand there and you fight it. So God bless you, my friend, and you are my friend.
We are, but so do you fight it. Nobody like you. And you and Sean and a few people, it's not a huge group of people because it seems to be heading in the wrong direction in many ways, but in the end we win.
Now, it's understandable why some conservatives are rejecting what Israel's government is doing. Number one, they believe in humanity, thank God. But sadly, according to Gallup, the majority are still on board, likely due to the media bubbles they exist in. So if you're watching, for instance, the Fox News channel, Fox News, which is owned by Rupert Murdoch, a huge supporter of Israel, you're gonna get one side of the story and one side only. and you're very likely going to be supportive of what's happening in Gaza. You're not going to see the images of the starving children or the aftermath of the Israeli bombardments. You're not going to get an analysis of how much American taxpayers are shelling out to bankroll this ongoing genocide. You're not going to get that side of the story. So, according to Gallup, again, the majority of Republicans are still on board. 2/3 of Republicans, 67%, now have a favorable opinion of Netanyahu, compared with 19% of independents and 9% of Democrats. While Republicans have held a consistently more favorable opinion of Netanyahu than Democrats and independents throughout the trend, the current 58-point party gap happens to be the largest. And here's another important chart to look at from Gallup. Let's put it up and I'll tell you what you're looking at. So this is support for Israel's military action in Gaza by party ID. As of July, only 8% of Democrats approve of Israel's actions in Gaza, and only 25% of independents feel the same. Both of those percentages have dropped drastically since October of 2023. Yet as of July, the same amount of Republicans approve of Israel's genocide in Gaza as they did almost 2 years ago, 71%. Though many Americans still support Netanyahu and the genocide that he is currently conducting, independents are turning away from Israel in pretty huge numbers, and that should give us some hope. Meanwhile, the man who Trump calls a war hero is continuing to slaughter innocent people. Dropsite News reported this just today. This is from this morning. The Ministry of Health recorded 58 people killed over the past 24 hours. Including 22 while seeking aid. 3 more people died due to starvation. In total, Israel has killed at least, and again, I want to reiterate, this is an undercount, 62,122 Palestinians and injured 156,758 since October 7th, 2023, according to the Ministry of Health. The Ministry of Health is unable to access the Palestinian bodies that remain trapped under the rubble. If you see aerial images of the Gaza Strip, you'll notice that it is almost completely leveled. Every single building has been bombed. And so who knows what the actual death toll really is? I am horrified to find out, but one day we will. And that day, when that day comes, we should pay very close attention to what the talking points are by the Israeli government and its defenders here in the United States. What kind of story are they gonna spin to justify the mass slaughter of innocents in the Gaza Strip as Israel takes that land for themselves? All right, we're gonna take a break. When we come back, I'm gonna talk a little bit about what our Secretary of Homeland Security wants to do with the border wall. Come right back. I don't care if you're Christian. In fact, I will fight for you to have your religious liberty and practice your Christianity. I believe in that. I don't believe in Christianity, which means that you do not get to dictate the way I live my life based on your religion. I don't care what the Bible says. You have every right in the world. All those women who identify with your religion have every right in the world to not get an abortion, to not take birth control, but they do not have the right to dictate my life and what I decide to do with my body. I don't care about your goddamn religion. I'm so tired of having nonstop conversations about what the Bible says. You live your life in the way that you interpret the Bible. Again, I don't care, but you don't get to take the Bible and tell me, well, the Bible says this in this chapter, in this verse. I don't care. I don't care, I don't believe in it, and I have the right, based on our Constitution, to not believe in it.
Here I am, Nancy Pelosi, saying this country needs a strong Republican Party, and we do.
No one is representing what I call the silent majority, which is about 2/3 of this country, indisputably progressive.
But now we say the time has come for regime change in American television.
The Young Turks Network.
You have the Young Turks saying this is the time to fight for our values.
Young Turks is the oldest left media institution I believe that there is. Real front runner in the online media space.
You guys might know us.
biggest online left of center outlet that exists.
All of you know the Young Turks?
People from this district heard about Justice Democrats by watching your show.
Thanks to the Young Turks for covering Trayvon Martin's case early on when few people were covering.
They don't stop, I won't stop. Racism won't stop, so I won't stop.
Species are at risk of going extinct. Major media outlets did not dedicate much time at all to that.
We reached a whole heap of people with our progressive message. We're not the Young Turks, you're the Young Turks.
That 300 million is a pretty good number, Well, that's the size of the US population. You know what our next target is? The size of the entire world.
We just crossed 5 billion views on YouTube.
I mean, imagine 10 years ago thinking one day, we would have looked at you like, are you nuts?
Young Turks has just passed another milestone. 25 billion lifetime views.
Damn.
Too strong, way too strong. That's 25 billion times someone watched the progressive message delivered to people all over the world. You know who helped to do that? You guys did. Our members and our audience are amazing, and they helped us to reach 2 generations, both millennials and Gen Z. They're both super progressive, and I gotta tell you, we're just getting started. Thank you.
Corruption, injustice, the system is rigged against you. Every day we're blasted by a flurry of terrible news from every angle, which can make it challenging to stay positive and know how to fight back. The Damage Report is your solution. I'm Johnny DeRola, and my daily morning show cuts through the noise and exposes the real damage being done to our country, the world, and how we can fight back against it. Corporate greed crushing workers? We'll name names. Politicians selling you out for their corporate overlords? We've got the receipts. Climate disaster, economic collapse, the rise of fascism. No spin, no establishment talking points, just the truth that you need to survive and resist. But it's not all doom and gloom. We'd love to have you join the Dragon Squad, our community of positive-minded activists who turn the day's news into positive action. With new episodes every weekday, listen to The Damage Report to get honest news, unflinching commentary, and daring coverage you won't find anywhere else. Listen to The Damage Report on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts, because understanding the damage is the first step to fixing it.
Jazzercise.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. I just want to say there's so many wonderful comments that I can't, actually, you know what? I'm gonna read them right now. You know, I'm the executive producer. I'm gonna read the comments. You guys are so wonderful, thank you. Eclectic Miscellanea in our member section says, kudos to Anna for not only continuing to report on Israel in spite of the disgusting threats against her, but digging even deeper to help uncover even more heinous acts by our so-called ally through the years. By the way, can we just acknowledge Trump calling himself a war hero? How is that not stolen valor? He's a draft dodger, has never seen a single day in combat. What do you mean you're a war hero? What is that? It's just, I didn't realize, like it hadn't registered to me until our break when I was talking to our stage manager, John. It's just, it's wild. Anyway, let's go to Danny Sam, who says, thank you to him, meaning Dr. Rahman. And all the doctors and healthcare workers in Gaza, absolutely, what a hero. Somebody else also suggested that he be a candidate for Turk of the Year, so we should make note of that so I don't forget. Kyle says, the only thing better than Anna's journalistic integrity is how smashing she looks in yellow. Thank you. Let's go to Path. Put that away, who says, Kana Massey need to have Dr. Rahman to testify to Congress. It will fall on deaf ears, but at least factual testimony will be on the record. It's not much, but it's something. I think that's actually a really great suggestion. Jack Callahan says, another great interview. Anna, you're on a roll, thank you. And let's go to, there was one comment that I think is super important here. So Burrito Bandito says, to get a more accurate temperature of Israel, okay, that wasn't the comment I was talking about. There was someone else. All right, I'll read it because I don't want to censor you. But this wasn't the comment I was referring to. To get a more accurate temperature of Israel, use a rectal rather than an oral thermometer. Okay, someone else wrote in and argued that they don't believe the polls coming out of Israel, which is actually funny because John, our stage manager, was making the same point. The polls showing that 82% of Israelis are in favor of what's going down in Gaza. They argue that maybe those polls are kind of manipulated by the Israeli government. I don't know whether that's true or not. Maybe it would make more sense to interview, the organization or someone from the organization that's facilitating those mass protests in Israel to kind of get a better idea. But for now, all I have to go by are the polls and the public comments that you hear, Israelis make in the media. All right, let's get to our next story.
Now, if you look at the structure that's behind me, it's tall, which makes it very, very difficult to climb. And today, we are also going to be painting it black. That is specifically at the request of the president, who understands that in the hot temperatures down here, when something is painted black, it gets even warmer, and it will make it even harder for people to climb.
Yesterday, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem announced that the southern border wall will be painted black at the request of President Donald Trump. Now, you heard the reasoning for it. They don't want people climbing the wall, and so they want to make it extra hot by painting it black. Cool. So look, the border wall isn't just getting a new paint job. Here's Kristi Noem with more.
When you look at what is behind us as far as the wall that is being built, you see obviously the structure, but also there will be more added to it as far as technology, cameras, sensors that will ensure that it will be secure far into the future and that will be efficient as well. Here you see structure. We will have waterborne infrastructure that will be put in place as well, and then that technology will be installed.
Fantastic, and considering the fact that Trump's budget bill has allocated a ton of money to, just squashing immigration, they've got a lot to work with. Remember, Congress set aside roughly $170 billion for immigration enforcement and border security efforts through the legislation, including $75 billion in extra funding for ICE. About $46 billion, by the way, from that funding is set aside for walls and barriers along the border. And that's even though, oh wow, would you look at that? Border crossings have gone down dramatically since Trump has taken office. So, okay. I mean, let's get into the numbers and then we'll talk about whether or not this makes sense, whether we should be spending precious resources on something that at the moment isn't really much of a problem. So here are some statistics from the Trump administration. July was another month of record low illegal crossings at the southern border, with just 4,598 illegal immigrants arrested by Border Patrol, a 24% drop from the previous record low set in June, and an average of just 148 illegal crossings per day. So remember, they're getting caught by Border Patrol, they're getting arrested and then dealt with. And on top of that, border crossings overall are down significantly under Trump, especially compared to what was transpiring under the Biden administration, which by the way is a good thing, right? When you get the illegal border crossings down, when you solve that issue, great. So why throw more money at the border when it's no longer an issue? That monthly total is nearly 500 fewer than the average number of daily illegal crossings under the Biden administration, 5,110, and a staggering 97% decrease from July of 2022, 181,834, 96% decrease from July of 2023, 132,642, and 92% decrease from July of 2024, 56,400. But why not do a little remodel, freshen up the wall with some black paint and some surveillance, of course. And Noem has also stated that since her term as Homeland Security Secretary began, over 1.5 million undocumented immigrants have decided to leave the United States. And of course, that's part of the administration's efforts to get people to self-deport. They do give these individuals incentives, including a $1,000 reward and a free flight out of the country. Now look, we were unable to confirm the number given by Secretary Noem. That's what she's claiming, but we don't know if that's the actual number. And to be quite frank, this administration kind of has a record of lying about things. But if they say that their self-deportation program is working, great. Obviously, there's been success at the border since there are far fewer border crossings. And the Washington Post, by the way, has reported the following, or did report the following in 2022. In regard to painting the wall black. This isn't new. This is something that Trump actually wanted to do back in the day. So the president's determination, again, this is a Washington Post piece from 2020. The president's determination to have the steel bollards coated in black has fluctuated during the past several years, and military commanders and border officials believed as recently as last fall that they had finally talked him out of it. They consider the black paint unnecessary, costly, and a significant long-term maintenance burden. I mean, have you ever dealt with black paint? And they left it out of the original US Customs and Border Protection design specifications. But Trump apparently still loves the idea, still insists, and now he's gonna get what he's always wanted, a big, beautiful, painted black border wall. And aside from that plan, as we all know, here's what Secretary Noem had to say about cameras and other technology surveilling the border. Oh, we don't have a video for that. Okay, no worries. So obviously they're going to surveil the border. There's already surveillance at the border, but they really want to beef it up, give some government contracts to Palantir and others. So let's get into that. In April of this year, Wired reported that ICE is paying Palantir $30 million to build Immigration OS surveillance platform. Cool. Now the platform's objective is to give ICE near real-time visibility on immigrants who are self-deporting, but that's not all it would do. Immigration OS's targeting and enforcement prioritization capability would streamline the selection and apprehension operations of illegal aliens. People prioritized for removal, ICE says, should be violent criminals, gang members, and visa overstays. About the visa overstays, let's remember that most of them travel to the country not through the southern border, but by flying here. And then they just overstay their visas. So painting the border wall black isn't really gonna solve that issue, is it? The immigration life cycle process function would streamline the identification of aliens and their removal from the United States with the goal of making deportation logistics more efficient. It's more of our money getting sent to Palantir in the form of government contracts. That's what this really is. The looting that's currently going on when it comes to our resources is pretty remarkable, to be honest. Now, Wired was not able to verify the data sources Palantir would be utilizing. Palantir has been an ICE contractor for a long time, since 2011, but surveillance really isn't a new and cutting edge idea. Let's just keep it real. And in 2023, Axios published a piece about this, if you want to call bullet points a piece. US deploys AI in virtual border wall. So the article explains that the US has deployed autonomous surveillance towers along the border with sensors that can scan for miles. It also notes that defense contractors such as Anduril Industries and Albit Systems of America, a subsidiary of Israeli-based Elbit Systems, are among those who have recently built new towers on the border. Hey, you know what? Speaking of Israel, since we're discussing foreign threats to the United States, why don't we talk about a threat that the Trump administration was totally cool with? A threat specifically to American children. So now would be a good time to remind everyone that the Trump administration still hasn't addressed the fact that the Department of Justice under the Trump administration, there we go, allowed that guy, this creepy, disgusting guy by the name of Tom Alexandrovich, an Israeli cybersecurity official and suspected pedophile, to flee to Israel after he was charged with using technology to lure minors for sex, American minors. Yeah, that guy. Okay, so local police in Las Vegas and the FBI caught him during a sting operation where he was trying to have sex with a 15-year-old girl. No time to comment on that, I suppose. But I am really looking forward to the border wall getting painted black. Right, because the Trump administration is very much concerned about foreign threats to America. Now look, I have no problem with wanting to control immigration. I don't want people's human rights to be violated in the process of doing so, obviously. But you can't purport to give a damn about the American people by fear-mongering about foreign threats when one of the biggest foreign threats to this country, Israel, continues to get away with bad behavior. They get to have their government officials, that guy, okay, Alexandrovich, is part of Netanyahu's government in Israel. He's the head of their cybersecurity agency. He comes to the United States 3 to 5 times a year based on what he told authorities. So the fact that he was allowed to go back to Israel, the fact that he's not facing punishment for attempting to have sex with a 15-year-old minor in America is a problem, isn't it? Especially when he had traveled to the United States so often. Who knows how many people, how many kids he was able to victimize without us knowing about it? We'll never know because we can't investigate it. We can't prosecute him. We just let him go. And in Israel, he's on leave, but that's it. Because when it comes to killing American citizens in the West Bank, 6 of which have been killed in the West Bank by Israeli settlers, impunity. When it comes to attempts to rape kids in America, impunity, as long as it's an Israeli official. So please spare me the faux concern about foreign threats to Americans. Because unless the Trump administration addressed what its DOJ did in the case of Alexandrovich, I don't believe anything that comes out of that administration about our safety. We'll be right back.
You heard it with your own eyes. What's up? How you doing? What am I doing here? Okay, I just kind of showed up. All right, I'm gonna read some of your comments. You know we're on Substack, you know that, right? Check it out at tyt.com/Substack. You know Operation Hope, right? You know that is shoptyt.com. You know that, come on. Get out of here, you know it. You know about Chapter, right? That's the folks that we're partnered up with because they're trying to help people get better rates on Medicare plans. I like them. You crazy? AskChapter.org/TYT. AskChapter.org/TYT. You can get the average is $1,100 in savings. Who doesn't want $1,100 in savings? You crazy? Why do I keep asking if you're crazy? I do this with my kids all the time. It's fun. Anyways, okay, check them out when you get a chance. 20 minutes saves you a lot of money. I'm doing it. So Atomic Ants, oh look, Mad Hat, thanks for joining, brother, on TYT.com. Atomic Ant says, TYT family, can I get a birthday shout out as the oldest TYT member, as Cenk calls me?
I love you, Ann.
I don't know, did you hear that? That was Anna shouting from the corner of the studio, I love you, Ann. Okay, Ann, we all love you. Happy birthday, you crazy? Okay. Anyways, no, you're not the oldest member. Actually, Bob Freeman is the literally member number 1. If he's
Anna's so dope.
But Ann is, I think, top 20 or so, something like that. I forget. But Ann, you're awesome, and have a wonderful birthday. Embedded Dude says, look at this comment. This episode of TYT is Pulitzer Prize material, in my opinion.
Wow.
Okay, let's note that the Pulitzer Prize will be given for the portion of the program I was not on. Okay. Kyle writes in, the only thing better than Anna's journalistic integrity is how smashing she looks in yellow.
I actually had read that already, but it's okay. I can hear it again.
Oh, all right, well, what are you gonna do? She's here for the people. Okay, smashing is a fun word. Octo Squiddies writes in on Twitch. The president also requested sharks with freaking lasers on their heads to patrol the wall. Unfortunately, we were only able to acquire ill-tempered, mutated sea bass to fulfill the role until laser sharks can be procured. Trump is a bigger joke than Dr. Evil. Like any reference to sharks with freaking laser beams on their heads. Okay, YouTube members responded to Horseshite. War hero, Nobel Peace Prize candidate, LMAO. Anthony McClendon writes in, I love the handy dandy chart. Anna reminds me of Mr. Fitzgerald, my 9th grade science teacher. Seriously though, great segment. I rated equally with the interview you had with the author of the 100 Years War Against the Palestinians. You rock. Brandon Shuey says, I'm with Anna when she said this has been a very eye-opening, this meaning the genocide in Gaza. Yes. All right, we'll be right back.
Smash it.
All right, back on TYT, you crazy dog. Cenk Uygur, Anna Kasparian with you guys. Got a great show ahead. The rest of it for you guys. But look, this momentous day, we're on Substack. Are you checking it out on tyt.com/Substack? Of course you are, don't be ridiculous. And so is Trinity Fletchall, because we've got our first comment ever from a Substack audience. I like it because we just went on there. Trinity writes in, my mom bought me a Substack sub to watch you guys. Well, Trinity, who doesn't love your mom? Okay, welcome aboard. We love it. All right, we've got a lot more comments and stories for you guys. So let's do it, Casper. What's next?
Let's do it. Well, let's talk a little bit about some fundraising that was happening on behalf of a Republican, and it turns out Democrats were involved.
Of course.
We have watched this state become essentially unlivable for working class people, and it makes me deeply angry. My name is Graham Plattner, and I'm running for US Senate in Maine to defeat Susan Collins. I'm not fooled by this fake charade of Collins' deliberations and moderation. The difference between Susan Collins and Ted Cruz is at least Ted Cruz is honest about selling us out and not giving a damn. People know that the system is screwing them. They know it in their bones.
That guy is dope, okay? He's a populist outsider by the name of Graham Plattner. And he just announced a Senate run against Republican Senator Susan Collins in Maine. And you think Democratic donors would be like lining up to fundraise for him, especially following the years that they have failed in unseating Susan Collins. But they're actually helping Susan Collins in an effort to defeat him. It's kind of incredible. So in a piece titled Susan Collins to Get Hollywood Treatment at Fundraiser featuring Democrats, we have learned that big name Democratic donors are essentially throwing fundraisers for her and helping to fund her campaign so she gets reelected. So she is going to come to Los Angeles and destroy all of our commutes on September 26th. And that's according to an invitation that was reviewed by the Times. The woman hosting the fundraiser is actually a longtime liberal donor by the name of Sherry Lansing, who, by the way, used to be the chairwoman over at Paramount Pictures. And she hosts these fundraisers in her swanky Bel Air home, again, clogging up traffic and making Angelenos miserable so the rich can buy their politicians. Casey Wasserman is the sports and entertainment mogul and chairman of the Los Angeles Olympics Organizing Committee, and he too will essentially co-host this event. So before I go on any further, okay, before I talk about what a wonderful ad that was, because who doesn't love watching Plattner, do like manly lumberjack things? What are your thoughts on this, Jake?
I'm pro lumberjack things.
Same.
Okay, so first of all, as soon as I read about him, I thought maybe we need to Plattner this guy in the Senate. And Rebellion PAC is reaching out to him literally as we speak. The reason I like him is because he's no holds barred. And I've been waiting for that for 20 straight years. Number two, he is our kind of Democrat. What does that mean? That means he's a populist, but that doesn't stick with wherever you think someone on the left should be on the old school political spectrum. So he picks and chooses his topics. For example, he loves universal health care and thinks that we should of course have it, right? He hates the endless wars. I mean, he's perfect in that populist way. But if you're looking for him to be progressive all the way down the social issues, you're not. That's not what you're likely to get. Okay. So, and if you think, oh, that sucks, I hate it. He's disagreeing with me on ideology 2.5%. All right, well then he's not the guy for you. And by the way, no one is. Okay. But if you like populism and you won't hate money in politics, this is the brother. Okay, now to the more important thing. So he's a great candidate, that's awesome. But why are Democrats backing Susan Collins?
Yeah, why?
They've been trying to get rid of her theoretically for 2 decades now. Actually even longer, as long as I've been covering politics, Democrats have been talking about, oh, we're gonna get Susan Collins the next time, right? And remember they raised like $4 million for a provisional candidate last time, et cetera. They were so gung-ho. No, because it's the uniparty, guys. They're, as we've told you a million times, and we told you 20 years ago, right? We've been telling you this, and now the whole world is beginning to catch up to us. They don't really mean it. There's only a couple of things they care about. Do they care about some of the social issues? Sure, right? That's why they're Democratic donors, right? But when you get to 2 issues that they care about, they're gonna be outside the populist bandwagon completely. So the Democratic donors are gonna split, I don't know if it's in half or if a majority of them are gonna go against the populists and flip over to the Republicans. Because the 2 issues they care most about is taxes. You better not, hey, don't touch my money, okay? Yep. And so in favor of corporations and all that.
Neoliberalism.
Yeah, and number 2 is of course Israel. And so a lot of the populists are, or almost all of them are saying, let's not fund Israel anymore because it's a genocide and it's terrible. And they're like, what did you say? That's it, we're going over the Republicans. Who cares about the Democrats? Wait, I thought you guys said unity. You guys were the ones yelling at us when we were supporting Bernie Sanders because you said, oh, unity, blah, blah. No. The minute Israel and neoliberalism is touched, they're gone. They're now instantly Republicans. Told you.
So just real quick, going back to the co-host of this fundraiser, Casey Wasserman. So Wasserman is a longtime Democratic donor as well, but he has taken steps to ingratiate himself with the right as of late, giving Olympic medals to President Trump at the White House this month and donating to some Republicans during the election cycle. And I think Cenk's analysis here is 100% correct. When we talk about the uniparty, it doesn't mean that both parties are exactly the same. Where they tend to differ are the social issues, and we shouldn't minimize those social issues, they're important. But if you ask me, what's even more important are the 2 issues of the economy and war. And there's a lot of agreement with the 2 parties when it comes to those 2 issues. So with that in mind, a person close to Lansing and Wasserman, the 2 hosts for this fundraiser in Los Angeles, said they decided to participate in the fundraiser because it was set up as a bipartisan host committee with 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans. So a guy named Harry Sloan is one of the Republicans hosting the event and is the former chairman of MGM. The other is Michael Burns, vice chairman of the Lionsgate Film and Television Studio. So what are people paying to attend this event, this big fundraiser for Republican Senator Susan Collins from Maine? Tickets for the reception run from $3,500 to $10,000, which isn't the worst. Like, we've covered political fundraisers where like a seat at the table is $150,000, right? So believe it or not, this is on the lower end of the scale. Clearly, this event was planned before Graham Plattner joined the race, so I want to be clear about that. But he is now one of 6 declared Democratic primary candidates in this race for the Senate seat in Maine. Governor Janet Mills is expected to jump in soon as well. So it's not like the Democratic donors attending the fundraiser had like no choice but to back Collins. Now let's get back to Plattner and who he is, what he represents. So he's a 40-year-old Army and Marine veteran, pretty impressive, who did 4 combat tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. He's an oyster farmer who was born and raised in Sullivan, Maine, so he's a local, and he's running on a platform of universal health care, housing affordability, and ending US involvement in foreign wars. And as someone who would serve in a Senate seat, having that position is incredibly important. Plattner really thoughtfully explained to NBC News just how his experience in the military helped shape his political positions. He said, quote, "When I joined the Marine Corps, I joined up because I really truly believed in the American project. I wanted to fight for something I loved and that I thought was good in Iraq and Afghanistan. I watched both failed policies, failed strategies, failed tactics being used over and over and over again. There's a point where you have to start asking yourself, what is the point of this? Why are you doing this? And when I went back as a security contractor in 2018, when I began to realize, what I began to realize is that I was just watching vast amount of taxpayer money getting put into the pockets of defense contractors, of security contractors, of this whole apparatus that almost seemed to exist merely to take taxpayer money and put it into somebody's private bank account. And in seeing that up close for a while, it turned me into a deeply, deeply cynical and angry guy. From that, I began to kind of look at our larger political system, our larger economic system, and you just begin to see the same exact thing. So if he manages to win the Democratic primary, the general will be incredibly tough. So Collins has managed to essentially stave off previous Democratic challengers, even in blue Maine. In her last campaign in 2020, she beat Democratic opponent Sarah Gideon by more than 8 percentage points, even as Donald Trump lost Maine by more than 9 points. Cenk.
Yeah, so one thing I like about Plattner, among others, is that he's willing to call out Susan Collins as an extreme right winger. For some reason, other Democrats are so putting soft. I mean, I've now seen like 12 races against her, and they're all like, even though she's just a beautiful, great moderate, we just like to tweak her just a tiny bit. We're just like 2 inches to the left of her. That's not a real campaign. That's why they keep losing her. Her voting record is overwhelmingly pro-Trump. Plattner's right. You can barely distinguish her voting record from Ted Cruz. But all the Democrats are like, oh, don't say that. Why wouldn't you say that? What's wrong with you? They're like, on top of everything else, like establishment Democrats are really not bright. And if they want to cry about that, I'm super happy to have them cry, right? You can't say that, we're the educated elite. Are you? All your education led to you being a dumbass who can't create a clear distinction between you and your opponent. So I've seen them make this mistake 1,000 times. In fact, it's a big part of my book, Justice is Coming. So this brother is not making that mistake. He's like, no, she's like Ted Cruz, okay? And that's what her voting record shows. That's a winning strategy, that's good politics. In terms of policy, I like all of his policies, but that is exactly why the Democratic donor class. Now, look, let me be clear about that. Because there are a bunch of Democratic donors who are good guys and who look at someone like him and go, hey, he might be able to beat Collins. I agree with him on abortion. I agree with him on universal health care. I agree with him on money out of politics. I agree, great, wonderful, right? And then there's about half of the Democratic donors, first of all the corporations, all the foreign governments, right? But then even once you get past that, there's still a big chunk of Democratic individual donors who are like, did you say you disagree with Israel? 2%, get out of here. I'll vote for a Republican. I don't care. I'll vote for Ted Cruz. I don't care. Israel, 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 Israel. If you're saying that doesn't exist, you're just wrong. So you can say, oh, well, you shouldn't say it even though it obviously exists. Okay, but my job is news. Okay, so I'm gonna tell you the truth. And then, but it's not just Israel. There's Democrats who are neoliberals, and they believe that they should get tax cuts plus abortion rights, plus gay rights, right? And so if you're not in favor of tax cuts for the rich, or you're not in favor of serving for the rich, they're gonna vote for the Republican. They're not just gonna vote for the Republican. As we're showing you here, they're going to actually fundraise for the Republican. They're gonna give their money to the Republican to make sure that they defeat a Democrat. So one last thing about that portion of the story, I don't wanna hear any talk about unity, okay?
But no,
we're way past
more
that.
important.
And just
Hold on, more important. Stop attacking us when we're critical of Democrats, okay? Like, you should be more upset at people who have power to influence elections, including these Democratic donors.
No.
Stop coming for us. We do the news.
Yeah. But I mean, look, I'll go further than that. I mean, we said, as we supported Bernie and as we've supported populists on the left and in the Democratic Party for the last 20 years, or I'll speak for myself, as I've done that, we were always accused of being not sufficiently loyal to the Democratic Party.
Well, I'm not loyal to the Democratic Party.
Okay, so but now the people who made those accusations are busy fundraising for Republicans. So spare me your total and utter BS about who's the better Democrat. Oh, you should vote for Hillary Clinton. We did, okay? Are you happy? Okay, we told you she was a crap candidate. She was a crap candidate, she did lose. And so all of you ranting and raving about unity was always a lie. We were right about it.
So in our members only bonus episode today, I wanna talk about just how pathetic some Democrats, and I'm talking about the politicians, have gotten in regard to essentially getting in bed with right-wingers, including Donald Trump. So Andrew Cuomo is pretty desperate in this mayoral race in New York City. In the bonus episode, I'm gonna tell you about who he's trying to ingratiate himself with. So if you wanna become a member, tyt.com/join, and we'll talk about that.
One super quick last thing, because I just thought of it. Look, guys, there's a theory out there among some on the left that, oh no, we could do an alliance with corporate Democrats, and that's better than getting independent voters.
How has that ever worked out well?
Okay,
hasn't that been the case?
That is comically wrong strategy. Okay, because they're not even on your side, brother. What are they doing? The corporate Democrats have already run from the building and out there fundraising for Republicans. So come back to your senses. You have to be for the actual left, money out of politics, anti-war, etc. Good news, that's where all the independents are. Let's go get them and win an election, and win many elections.
Tim Dillon when we return.
Back on TYT, let's do some comments. Romulus 463 on Super Chat said, when should have Gazans insisted on their natural rights to self-defense? Long before the slaughter or after? Look, I'll just note this. Palestinians, according to American press and politicians, have no right to self-defense, no right to ever defend themselves in any way, shape, or form. Otherwise, they're dirty terrorist savages. But Israel has an infinite right to self-defense, which includes preemptive slaughter of anyone they perceive to be an enemy. And the fact that the mainstream media reporters claim that they can't see that hypocrisy shows you they're not really reporters. They're all jokes. Not your typical man says, you all quote the poll that Israelis back genocide, but who did it? If it's the government, I don't trust it, it's propaganda, it doesn't match the street protests. So brother, I wish you were right, or I don't know, brother or sister. And I love those protests, I want those protests to keep going, and 500,000 is a real number in Israel. It's not perfect because they're not really talking about Gaza, but it's okay, I'll take it because they're for peace. I will massively take it. I hope it's the entire country of Israel soon. But the polls, I just checked on it earlier today, it was done by Penn State and run by Haaretz, an Israeli paper. So it's totally legitimate. 82% of Israeli Jews saying they want ethnic cleansing in Gaza. They don't use that word, but they say evict them from Gaza, remove them completely from Gaza. So that is the definition of ethnic cleansing. 56% say ethnically cleanse Palestinians inside Israel who are already citizens. So we've gotten to past the tipping point of full fascism, right? Full supremacy, race. Yeah, I mean, literally the whole thing is based on racism, right? I mean, you can't argue otherwise. You say, we're the Jewish state, and now 56% of us want to drive out the Muslims because we hate them. Well, okay, and 82% say drive out all the Muslims from Gaza and take it for ourselves. Look, the culture in Israel is in a disastrous place, disastrous. And by the way, you got to check out Yuval Harari. We got to show it to you guys. We'll bring it to you in one of our episodes. He's like, this is not the Jewish culture I grew up in. And I totally agree with him. I grew up in a town that was heavily Jewish, beautiful culture. I don't recognize this Israeli culture at all. It's not the Jewish culture I grew up with, 1%.
Yep.
Project for Progress in the YouTube member section says, Anna, your humanity is showing. TYT is the only thing in this world that gives me hope when there's huge shortage of that right now. Never stop speaking the truth, and I know you won't.
Thank you. And by the way, everything that's been happening over the last 2 years, I talked about how it's very illuminating. For me, what gives me hope is that it's kind of given people I would least expect an opportunity to show their humanity, right? Which is why I keep commending people like Marjorie Greene, because despite all the stuff that she's done in the past that we obviously vehemently disagree with, when it comes to this issue, yeah, her humanity is showing too. And she's doing it knowing that almost the entirety of her political party is gonna engage in backlash. So, yeah. But thank you for that comment.
And there's wonderful Israeli dissidents that you should check out. Gideon Levy is an angel among many, many others. All right, we'll be back. TYT, Cheng and Anna with you guys. Soya, thank you for joining through TYT.com, and Aries, thank you for donating through that as well. TYT.com, obviously our website, and a good place to join and participate in the polls, be part of our community. Love it. Thank you guys. Anna, what's next?
Tim Dillon's got some thoughts over what's going down in Washington, D.C.
They've already got the cops on the street that are not cops or that are the military. They've already got the National Guard on the street. They already have all your information in DC, and now they just get to decide what is and isn't over the line. That should scare everybody. You're nuts, dude. If this doesn't scare you, you're nuts. And the people you'd think would be upset about it are kind of cheerleading it. They think it's great. So isn't that fun?
Tim Dillon had some pretty harsh words for Donald Trump's big government takeover in Washington, D.C., and even slammed conservatives who are cheering on the power grabs. Now, as we know, Trump recently sent the National Guard into DC and assumed federal control of the city's police force. And he did so claiming that they need to get a handle on the rampant crime in the area. Now, in the coming days, the number of National Guard troops patrolling DC will more than double thanks to participation from other red states. So the roughly 800 DC National Guard troops already deployed in the capital will be joined by about 200 personnel from Mississippi, between 300 and 400 from West Virginia, and 150 from Ohio and 200 from South Carolina, beefing up a presence that has largely stood idle around typically low crime, tourist heavy areas in the city. Okay, so I would not describe it as low crime, and I think that's part of the problem, right? And everyone's gonna get mad at me when I talk about what I mean in just a minute, but let me just get through this and then I'll talk about that. So even though initial deployment orders said that the troops would not be armed, the reality is a little different from that. So the White House said in a statement on Saturday, this past weekend, that the National Guard troops may be armed consistent with their mission and training to protect federal assets, provide a safe environment for law enforcement officers to make arrests, and deter violent crime with a visible law enforcement presence. And what's also concerning is that despite the fact that Trump has a 30-day limit on maintaining power over DC, he has now claimed, falsely by the way, that he has authority to keep control indefinitely. So just real quick, Cenk, I wanna go back to the way The Hill kind of described DC. When you create a vacuum, when you deny the facts on the ground, and DC has had a problem with crime, particularly carjackings, right? When you just pretend like it's not a problem or the problem's getting better, so let's just leave it alone, people who live under those conditions and are frustrated and angry about it are going to sign off or be okay with authoritarian measures like this in the name of safety, okay? It doesn't mean that I support the idea of a militarized federal law enforcement force, basically bashing in people's skulls in DC. I don't want that. I wanted to prevent that, which is why when I covered those crime stories, I was trying to get the left in general, okay, not leftists, but just the left in general to understand this is the reality on the ground. And we need to find better solutions to deal with it instead of pretending like it doesn't exist. But anyway, go ahead, Cenk.
So I wonder if somebody else said something that is similar to Tim Dillon. We'll get to that in a second. But first, look guys, the number one problem here in this story is that the media is painting this as only two options. And unfortunately, the ideologues do agree with the media in this case. But I'm gonna tell you a third option that's infinitely better, okay? So option number one is there is no crime in DC, don't sweat it. It's no big deal. You don't have to bring in the National Guard. You don't have to bring in anyone because crime is imaginary and it's de minimis, right? The second point of view is the crime is so bad, you got to bring in the National Guard and maybe the Marines and maybe Space Force, and you have to have a complete takeover and burn our Constitution. Why are those only two choices? Okay, and partly because the media is obsessed with the extreme left and extreme right, and that's what they say. So they're like, okay, no, here's another choice. The crime is real, it's significant in Washington. It's dropped a little bit, which we're happy about, although in kind of fishy ways, according to the reporting. But could we do more in Washington? Absolutely. So why doesn't the federal government do a quote unquote takeover of DC and hire 50% more cops? Okay.
Yeah, that would actually, because
so why do you need the National Guard? National Guard isn't supposed to be doing policing.
That's exactly right. Look, guys. Here's the other thing about what Trump is doing with the National Guard. The National Guard doesn't have the right to carry out the duties that local police or the Capitol Police would be carrying out. Now they can protect other federal agents, they could protect federal property, but it is not their jurisdiction to carry out local law enforcement matters. So that is to say that what Trump is engaging in is theater to a large extent, but also very authoritarian, right? Like the way that he's carrying this out is meant to create shock and awe. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the radical right loves what Trump is doing. And they're like, yes, finally, the tyrannical government is here. Wait, what? But they don't see the irony at all. And they're like, oh yeah, you guys during COVID made us wear masks. So take this, tanks on the street. Wait, but how does that actually further what you claim were your principles? Hey, I don't want the government in my business, but you want tanks in the streets? And you think that's less government invasion than a mask? So look, you can say, hey, we weren't in favor of the mask and we're against government tyranny, and that's why we're also against the tanks, but give us more cops. Okay, I say, okay, that makes sense, right? But if you say that you're against government tyranny, but you can't wait for a military takeover, that doesn't make any sense at all. And I'm kind of happy to see that the radical right's pissed with Tim Dillon. Okay, good. I want you to be pissed with Tim Dillon, and I can't speak for him, but I'm happy to have you pissed at me because I don't want the radicals, right? And by the way, let's keep it real on this one. The radical left's going to be pissed at us, right? Oh no, you called them radical. No, you no. Only pretend one side hasn't. And they'll say 50% more cops. Are you crazy? No way, way less cops.
No,
right?
you do. You need more cops. Sorry, you need more cops.
In the major cities, you need more cops.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that the cops should go randomly attack black people or Latinos or whatever. They should actually do policing, and we should demand accountability and policing. Look, I'm just going to show you this G4 here video to show you, yeah, look, this is a theme that a lot of us are talking about.
And then we'll get to Tim Dillon.
Yeah. If you're a right winger, whoever hung a flag that said, "Don't tread on me," brother, this is the tyrannical government you were warning about, okay? And you think your enemy comes at you from the front? No, your enemy comes at you from the back, okay? So the Republicans that said, "Oh yeah, don't tread on me, watch out for tyrannical government," then now they're rolling out tyrannical government in the streets of our cities, and you're not noticing.
So that was August of this year. Let's hear what Tim Dillon just recently said about the issue of authoritarianism.
I don't love this takeover of the this militarized police. I don't love it. I do understand we have a crime problem in cities. I'm not blind to it. Somebody's got to deal with that. But it's got to be the cops, right? We don't need National Guard, or do we? I don't know that we do. All of the stuff that's happening right now, the militarized police, the Palantir building the list. I don't love all of this. It seems like the precursor to the next thing. And the next thing might be much worse than this one. This country really does have a fascist kind of wet dream where they like the idea of the military so much.
I don't want to see our military on the streets. And by the way, since Trump has already done this in Los Angeles, the National Guard didn't want to be there. They hated it, right? And in fact, they didn't have much to do because, again, it is not what they are tasked to do as members of the National Guard. They are not supposed to carry out the duties of local law enforcement. All they can do is protect, public property, federal property, and protect federal agents. But yeah, Jink, I mean, you and Tim Dillon are very simpatico on this issue.
Yeah, and it makes sense because I bet you if you did polling, 60 to 80% of the country would land where Tim Dillon and I are.
Well, in fact, there is some polling of residents in Washington, D.C., and looks like they agree with Dillon. About 8 in 10 D.C. residents oppose Trump's executive order to federalize law enforcement in the city. A measly 17% support it. 61% also said that they feel less safe as a result of Trump's actions. Yeah, because it creates chaos, shock and awe. It's theater, it's more distraction from the Trump administration. Do I believe that Trump actually cares about people suffering from crime in Washington, D.C.? I don't. I do know that Trump desperately wants to stop taking jabs over his subservience to Israel and the fact that he engaged in a massive cover-up when it came to the Epstein files. So here you have it. Enjoy your distraction.
Yeah, I mean, there's the distraction, but there's something I'm more worried about, which is, now he's talking about, well, maybe we don't vote in the ways that we used to vote. And now I have the military in the streets. That's a super dangerous combo. And so, look, the reason why we obsess about the Dillons and the Rogans and the Andrew Schultz and Theo Vons and stuff is because that middle is critical. Because if that middle goes towards Trump and they go, oh yeah, military in the streets. Oh yeah, let's change how people vote. Oh yeah, only the Republicans can win. Then we're screwed. And all of the left combined won't be able to do anything because we won't have a majority, right? But if you win the independents over and the podcasters look like they're on our side for now, right? Then when he tries to do something terrible with the voting process, we need those guys to say, oh, hell no, don't touch the voting and get the goddamn military. Look, not goddamn military. Get the military off the goddamn streets, okay? So we don't need them there. They're for outside. They're supposed to protect us. I know they don't have much to do other than fight Israel's wars, but you're supposed to do policing in this country. So there's double worry. Last thing for me is, I'm curious what you guys are saying about this, because we do the show live, obviously 6 to 8 o'clock every night on YouTube. and we ask these live chats involve you guys. Does Trump's DC National Guard deployment concern you? 84% saying yes. Interesting, 16% saying no. I'm surprised that's that high, but that's why we do the polls. And we have a wide variety of people who watch the show, and that gives you a sense of it. All right, Anna.
Yeah. I mean, I'm worried about it. The one thing that gives me a little bit of, I don't want to say hope because hope's the wrong word, but Trump engaged in the shenanigans in Los Angeles. And that led to a lot of chaos, a lot of anger, protest demonstrations. It was terrible. But once people stopped paying attention, he's like, all right, I'm gonna pull the troops back. You know what I'm saying? Like he loves to put on a show and he loves to anger people. So there is a part of me that's hoping that this is gonna fizzle out. But yeah, he says provocative, terrible authoritarian things. So you shouldn't have your guard down, and you should be very careful about what Trump purports he wants to do.
Sometimes he'll pull back, but he pulls back when he senses he's unpopular. So that's why we have to drive this issue home and win the middle and get the 80% on our side. Otherwise, it endangers our elections, and that's the worst case scenario. We can't have it. All right, guys, bonus episode coming up next for our members. Hot gossip from Fox News anchors. You guys are gonna really enjoy that. Hit the join button below.
Dunking on Andrew Cuomo.
Everybody's gonna enjoy that. tyt.com/join. I believe that's why the Almighty made that website. Almighty did not make that website. All right, we'll be right back for the members.